Okay, think about this for a second. Are you maybe in the middle of a silent tug of war right now? It could be over project priorities, maybe budget stuff, or even just getting your team to actually use that new AI tool.
Yeah, those happen all the time.
Exactly. And what if I told you these kinds of hidden negotiations, they're happening constantly, and how you handle them in, 2025? It could seriously be the difference between hitting your goals and just falling short.
Right. And, forget that whole idea of a perfect win-win every single time. That's not always realistic, is it?
Not really. So today we're going to dive deep into mastering conflict, actually getting the outcomes you need, and strengthening relationships along the way. Without feeling like you're being manipulative or twisting arms.
Ready to decode the subtle art of influence for the year ahead.
Let's do it.
Okay. So we're basically pulling back the curtain on negotiation secrets from a real master, Chris Voss, the former FBI hostage negotiator. His book, Never Split the Difference, it's hugely influential.
Hugely. But this isn't just a book report, right?
No. Think of it more like a strategic briefing. We're taking these field-tested methods and sort of reframing them into actionable intel, specifically for the challenges we're seeing now in 2025.
So the mission is?
The mission is to give you tools you can use, like immediately. Tools to thrive in this fast-paced world, whether that's navigating tricky sales cycles or leading these dynamic, tech-heavy teams.
Consider this your playbook, basically. Turning unavoidable conflict into, a major advantage.
Exactly. Okay, so where do we start? What's the first critical piece?
Right. Let's kick things off with something that maybe feels a little soft, but honestly, trust me, it's the absolute bedrock of effective negotiation. Tactical empathy.
Tactical empathy, yeah. It's funny, people think negotiation is all about, hardball tactics or having the most leverage.
Right, be tough.
But Voss really argues the opposite. It's fascinating, this power of truly understanding the other side's emotional landscape.
So not just hearing words, but
it's actively working to get their perspective, and this is crucial, signaling that understanding back to them. That's tactical empathy. And a key technique he talks about is labeling.
Labeling, right. Those little phrases like it seems like, or it sounds like, it looks like, they almost feel too simple, don't they?
They do, but think about why they're so powerful, especially now in 2025. How are we mostly communicating?
A lot of remote stuff. Text, email, video calls.
Exactly. We're missing tons of nonverbal cues, right? The stuff that helps us read intentions and emotions when we're face to face. Misunderstandings can just, boom, escalate so fast like that.
Okay.
So labeling acts like this check on our own assumptions.
Yeah.
And maybe more importantly, it makes the other person feel genuinely heard, even if you're miles apart physically.
So it's kind of like a preemptive strike against miscommunication.
Yeah.
You acknowledge their potential negative feelings, maybe a client's worried about some new tech you're pushing.
Right.
And you diffuse that charge before it screws up the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we start actually using this? Flexing the empathy muscle.
Okay, here's a pro tip for 2025. Next time you're in, say, a virtual meeting, and maybe things feel a bit tense, could be budget cuts, changing roles, whatever. Consciously listen for the emotions underneath the words, even subtle ones. Then just try labeling what you pick up on.
Like if someone's quiet.
Yeah, or hesitant. You could gently say, it sounds like you might have some reservations about this approach. And then just pause. Give them space. It's amazing how that simple acknowledgement can shift the whole vibe.
Okay, I like that. It's almost like saying, hey, I see you, and I get this might not be easy. What's the next step, maybe in writing?
Good question. This week, try it in your emails or project updates. Try putting in a preemptive label based on how you think they might react. If you're giving news that could land badly, start with something like, it might seem like this decision is going to have a pretty big impact. See, it shows you're thinking about their side, softens the blow a bit.
Yeah.
And remember, the goal isn't to agree with the emotion.
Right. Just acknowledge it.
Just acknowledge it. Build that bridge of understanding.
Got it. So, okay, let's say you're trying to convince your team in 2025 to use some new project management software. You know it's going to be extra work at first.
Yeah, classic situation.
Instead of just listing features.
Right. You might start by saying, look, it sounds like there might be some initial frustration with learning a new system, especially with everything else on your plates right now. Label that potential negative feeling up front.
And that opens the door.
It shows empathy, creates an opening to actually address their concerns, and then you can talk about the long-term wins.
Brilliant. Okay. Tactical empathy. Got it. What's strategy number 2 for navigating 2025?
All right, the next one might feel a bit counterintuitive, especially in our sort of yes-focused culture. It's about embracing the power of no.
No.
Yeah.
Really? But isn't the whole goal to get them to say yes?
That's the old way of thinking, maybe. But Voss reframes no brilliantly. He sees it as the start of a real conversation, not just a brick wall.
How so?
Well, think about the psychology. If someone feels pressured into saying yes before they're really ready, what happens?
You might resent it or flake later.
Exactly. It breeds resentment, leads to weak commitments. But giving them the space, the safety to actually say no, that empowers them. It makes them feel in control, and then they can actually tell you what their real concerns are.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which leads to much stronger, more sustainable agreements down the road.
And that really resonates for 2025, doesn't it? With all the constant change, the uncertainty around things like AI, new business models, people are naturally cautious.
Totally. They want to feel like they have some agency, some control.
Yeah.
In this rapid-fire information overload world of 2025, feeling in control is a huge psychological need. If you push too hard for yes, you can trigger what psychologists call reactance.
Reactance.
Yeah, it's that pushback people have when they feel their freedom or autonomy is threatened. Inviting a no can actually sidestep that resistance and open things up.
Okay, interesting. So how do we actively, invite the no? Make it okay.
Pro tip for 2025. Try reframing your questions. Ditch the closed-ended ones that push for yes/no, and use open-ended, calibrated questions. Make it easy and safe for them to say no or express doubts.
So instead of, are you happy with this proposal?
Try something like, what about this proposal doesn't quite work for you? Or even, is now a bad time to talk about this? They feel less confrontational, right? They actively ask for concerns.
Yeah, I like that. It subtly shifts the power dynamic. What's another way to use no?
Okay, try this. This week, strategically aim for a no in a lower stakes situation. Maybe you're delegating a task to someone on your remote team.
Okay.
Instead of just assigning it, ask, would taking on this extra piece be a problem for you right now? If they give you an honest no, that's gold.
Why gold?
Because it tells you about their real workload, their capacity. Then you can find a better solution together. Remember, the information behind the no is what you're after.
So the no isn't the end. It's more like a signpost pointing to the real issues.
Yeah, precisely. And you know those really frustrating silences we get in 2025? The unreturned emails, the ghosting.
Yeah.
Voss suggests a surprisingly effective email for that. Just, have you given up on this?
Wow, that sounds blunt.
It is, but it taps into loss aversion. People hate feeling like they're losing out, and it gives them an easy way out. They can just reply no, which then, boom, opens the door for them to finally explain the holdup.
That's bold, but I can see how it cuts through the noise. Imagine, a software company trying to close a deal. Client goes silent.
Yeah, instead of another email listing features.
Right.
They could try, have you given up on exploring a solution for streamlining your workflow this quarter? The no is actually what you want there.
Because it gets them talking again.
Exactly. It prompts them to re-engage, clarify their position. Maybe they have new concerns, new priorities the company can now actually address.
Okay, my view on no has definitely shifted. What's next? What's the third essential skill for 2025 negotiations?
All right, number 3. This is the ability to shape reality by anchoring emotions.
Anchoring emotions. Okay, that sounds potentially a bit manipulative.
I get why you'd say that, but it's more subtle. It's grounded in how we perceive value. Our perception is relative, right? And it's heavily influenced by initial anchors, especially emotional ones.
Okay.
So by proactively dealing with potential negative emotions early on, Voss calls it an accusation audit, basically saying out loud their likely criticisms or fears first.
You say their fears.
Yeah, you verbalize what you think they might be thinking negatively. Doing that can actually make whatever you offer next seem much more reasonable, more favorable in comparison. It taps into our natural loss aversion.
Loss aversion. We feel losses more strongly than gains.
Exactly. We hate losing more than we enjoy winning the equivalent amount.
So in this kind of high-stakes info overload world of 2025, anxieties about AI taking jobs, market swings, this emotional anchoring gets even stronger.
Absolutely. The constant stream of news, the speed of change, it can leave people feeling pretty emotionally raw, more vulnerable.
Makes sense.
Which makes them more susceptible to these emotional anchors. So when you acknowledge their potential negative feelings first, you're not just building rapport, you're also subtly setting their emotional baseline. Any positive move from that point feels like a bigger win.
Okay, so how do we actually do this? Anchor emotions effectively.
Pro tip for 2025. Before you go into a potentially tricky conversation, maybe it's negotiating your salary in this weird job market, or discussing a performance issue with someone working remotely, do a quick mental accusation audit.
Oh.
Just list like 3 to 5 of the worst things the other person might be thinking or saying about you or your position. Just writing them down, acknowledging them to yourself, helps you prepare to address them calmly, strategically.
It's like mentally prepping for the worst case scenario.
Pretty much. And then this week, try actually starting a challenging conversation by verbalizing one of those potential negatives using a label.
For example.
Say you need to ask a client for an extension. You could start with, "You're probably feeling frustrated that we're asking for more time." It disarms them. It shows you get their potential disappointment, and it opens a door to a more understanding chat about why.
So acknowledge the potential storm clouds before they actually roll in.
You got it. And thinking longer term, especially when presenting options or pricing in these, unpredictable 2025 markets, anchor strategically by highlighting the potential losses of doing nothing.
Focusing on the downside of inaction.
Yeah. Like a cybersecurity firm pitching an upgrade might say, look, sticking with your current security, especially with these new AI-powered threats emerging, could leave your customer data really vulnerable. Yes, the upgrade's an investment, but think about the potential cost of a breach reputation, fines.
That reframes it completely. It's not an expense, it's risk mitigation.
Got it.
Yeah.
Can you give us a specific 2025 example?
Sure. Imagine a freelancer, right? Negotiating rates for a project involving some cutting-edge AI development in 2025. They know the client might think their rates are high compared to, standard web dev work.
So the freelancer might start by saying, it might seem like my rates are higher than average for a freelance developer, and you're probably looking at more cost-effective options. That's the accusation audit part.
Acknowledging the elephant in the room.
Exactly. And by doing that, they create the opening to then justify the rate, emphasizing the specialized AI skills needed, the potential delays or higher costs if someone without that expertise tries it. They're anchoring the client on the potential negative outcome of going cheaper.
That's incredibly smart. So we're not just reacting to emotions, we're proactively shaping their perception. Okay, what's the next level? Negotiation strategy number 4 for 2025.
The fourth big one is the art of uncovering black swans.
Black swans, those totally unexpected events that have a massive impact, right?
Yeah.
Nassim Taleb's idea.
Exactly. And in negotiation, black swans are those hidden bits of information. The other side has the unknown unknowns that, if you could just bring them to light, could completely flip the whole negotiation.
And often the other side doesn't even realize how important that info is.
Sometimes, yeah. Or they don't realize you don't know it.
And I bet in a world as complex and fast-moving as 2025, there are way more of these hidden factors flying around.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Complex global supply chains, AI developing at lightning speed, regulations shifting constantly. Unforeseen things can pop up with almost no warning. Just relying on public info or standard prep, it's not enough anymore.
You need to dig deeper.
You need strategies to unearth these potential game changers.
Okay, so how do we become black swan hunters?
Pro tip for 2025, try to cultivate a beginner's mind in every negotiation. Seriously. Consciously put your assumptions and what you think you know to one side. Remind yourself there's always stuff you don't know. Keep asking yourself, what could be true here that I haven't even considered? That mindset shift makes you way more receptive to subtle clues.
Stay curious, question everything. Makes sense. What about more active techniques? How do we actually dig?
Okay, this week, when you're in those exploratory chats, maybe vetting a new AI vendor, interviewing a candidate with unique skills, or trying to figure out why a competitor suddenly did something unexpected.
Yeah.
Make a real effort after you've built some rapport to ask those open-ended, calibrated questions. Start them with what and how.
Right.
Like, what are some of the biggest hurdles you see coming with integrating AI into your current workflow? Or how has that recent change in some regulation impacted your long-term strategy in ways maybe people aren't seeing yet? Questions like that push them to think beyond the obvious.
And potentially reveal hidden factors.
Exactly.
How do we spot a potential black swan, though? What are the signs?
Good question. On an ongoing basis, pay super close attention to inconsistencies, especially in 2025 across all the different ways we communicate, emails, calls, maybe even in person if you get the chance.
Inconsistency, like,
Does their tone in an email totally clash with how enthusiastic they sounded on a video call? Are they weirdly reluctant to discuss one specific point that seems minor? Label those things.
Use labeling again.
Yeah. You seem really excited about this partnership overall, but I also sense some hesitation when we talk about the data sharing part. What's behind that? That kind of gentle probing can often uncover unspoken worries or hidden priorities, potential black swans.
It's about reading between the lines, picking up on the subtle stuff.
Yeah.
Give us a 2025 example of finding one.
Okay. Imagine a small e-commerce business, right? 2025. They're negotiating a really crucial shipping contract. Instead of just hammering on price and delivery times.
They ask something different.
Yeah, the owner asks the logistics provider, what are some of the biggest challenges your entire industry expects to face in the next, say, 12 to 18 months that might affect service?
Okay.
And through that conversation, maybe they uncover that this provider is about to be acquired by a much larger company. A company with a known history of terrible service disruptions during integrations.
Whoa, that's a black swan.
Totally. Info the business owner had no other way of knowing. And it completely changes their negotiation strategy, right? Maybe they push for a shorter contract or start looking seriously at other providers.
Wow, yeah, that could literally save a business. So asking the right questions, being hyper-aware, it lets us uncover these hidden pieces. All right, what's the final piece of this negotiation mastery puzzle for 2025?
The fifth and final core strategy we're pulling out is negotiate within their religion.
Their religion. Okay, that sounds provocative in a business context.
It is a bit, but Voss uses religion to mean those deeply held core values, beliefs, the sense of identity that really drives someone or a whole organization.
So what they truly care about most.
Exactly. It could be ethical principles, public image, a commitment to being innovative, maybe even just fundamental personal beliefs. When you uncover their religion, you gain really powerful leverage. Voss calls it normative leverage.
Normative leverage. Why is it so powerful?
Because people have this deep psychological need to be consistent, to act in line with the values they claim to hold. So appealing to their religion shows you really understand them, you respect what they stand for.
And in today's world, 2025,
Oh.
which feels increasingly values-driven, sometimes polarized, I can see how tapping into that would be incredibly influential.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Consumers, employees, everyone's scrutinizing the values of the companies they deal with more and more.
True.
So understanding and aligning with their religion, it's critical. It's not just about having a great product anymore. It's about showing you share a commitment to what matters to them. It could be sustainability, data privacy with AI, fostering inclusive workplaces. Using that normative leverage builds much stronger, more resonant connections.
Okay, so how do we figure out someone's religion and then negotiate within that frame?
Pro tip for 2025, pay really close attention to the language they use. Look at their mission statements, their public comms, even just how they talk day to day. What values pop up again and again?
What are they always emphasizing?
Right. Is it always innovation? Customer first. Ethical sourcing. Employee well-being. These are all clues to their underlying religion.
So listen not just to what they say they do, but why they say they do it.
Precisely. And then this week, try consciously framing your proposals, your requests, so they directly align with that stated religion. If you're negotiating with a company that makes a big deal about sustainability in 2025,
You can make your proposal to that.
exactly. Highlight how what you're offering helps reduce environmental impact or promotes ethical practices. You're directly linking your offer to their core values.
So you're speaking their language, addressing their fundamental beliefs, not just their immediate surface level needs.
Exactly. And longer term, if you ever spot a disconnect like between their stated religion and something they're doing or proposing, you can gently point it out, again, using a label. Something like, it seems like value X is really fundamental to your organization, so I was a little surprised by this particular aspect of the agreement. Could you help me understand how it fits with that core value?
That creates a bit of tension for them.
It creates cognitive dissonance. It motivates them to find a way back to consistency with their core values. It's subtle but powerful influence.
Very subtle. Okay, can you give us one last 2025 example of negotiating within someone's religion?
Let's say there's a nonprofit in 2025 trying to get funding from a big tech company. And maybe this tech company recently got some bad press about, say, potential bias in its AI algorithms.
Okay, timely.
And the nonprofit's mission happens to be promoting ethical AI development. So instead of just pitching their funding needs,
They frame it differently.
they strategically frame the partnership as a way for the tech company to demonstrably live up to its stated commitment to responsible innovation, its religion, by supporting a project that directly tackles AI ethics and education, especially maybe in underserved communities.
So the funding becomes proof of their values.
Exactly. That normative leverage makes the ask way more compelling than just another request for a donation.
That's a brilliant way to align interests and values. Okay, so there we have it. A pretty deep dive into these powerful negotiation strategies from Chris Voss, really looking at them through the lens of 2025.
Yeah, and what's really cool is how these 5 principles, tactical empathy, embracing no, anchoring emotions, finding black swans, and using their religion, they all kind of weave together.
They're not totally separate tactics.
Not at all. They build on each other. It's a whole approach, really holistic and super effective for navigating pretty much any negotiation you'll face.
Absolutely. So by practicing that tactical empathy, the listening, the labeling, by understanding that no can be productive, by thoughtfully shaping perception with emotional anchors, by always digging for those hidden black swans, and by really getting and appealing to the other side's core values.
You're doing more than just bargaining.
Yeah, you're building understanding, you're shaping outcomes that can actually work for everyone involved. So as you navigate all those hidden negotiations happening around you in 2025, just remember this: negotiation doesn't have to be a battle.
It's really a process of discovery, information gathering, influence.
Exactly. And by mastering these strategies, you're really equipping yourself to hit your goals and strengthen your relationships in the year ahead. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.